I'll talk a little bit about Louis Bowmander and what he would always say, because I trained with him from such a young age that I feel like whatever I do it's quite influenced by
Of course.
him, because I started with him when I was very young, and he would always say, you get your audition, you read it once, you go for a walk, and you just let it percolate. And he would also talk about the idea of story. It's like sometimes we get too self-obsessed and we forget we are one ingredient, in a story. Like what part of this story are we? How are we going to move this story forward? So, after having a little bit of success, I decided to invest in a treadmill, which I put in our guest room in LA and push it into the bed. So when I get an audition, I read it and then I pull out the treadmill and I get on the treadmill and I just think about the story and I just try and take the ego out of it a little bit, kind of look at it from a wider perspective and see, what part of the story am I contributing to here and what is the overarching story? And then I start really visualizing it. And, at that point, your heart's kind of pumping and your endorphins are going and like you're opening up these new creative avenues that you might not have normally. And it's definitely something I use for writing as well. The more time, the better. That's how I feel with auditions. I'm definitely not the kind of person that can, well, sometimes I'm not the kind of person that can pull out like a same day brilliant thing. Like I definitely love having time. I love being able to read a full script. I love being able to find songs that feel like something the character would listen to or something that helps shape the tone of the project. I like to watch, if it's a show that's already on, I'm watching an episode. If it's a film and they've done something else, like, I'm going to try and watch at least part of this movie to understand how these people tell stories so that I can be like, oh, like, yes. So I remember once I was talking to a casting director because I was coaching and I was talking to someone I had coached, and the casting director was standing by me because I used to coach out of this place where people would cast stuff. And I was saying to this actor, like, this is this audition you have coming up. Like, this is a very specific tone. It's a type of comedy. You should watch the show. And I said, sometimes someone can do an incredible performance, like a beautiful performance, but it's just not the right tone.
Right.
It's too big or it's too small and intimate for something that should be bigger or should be small, and the casting director was there and they were like, that's a very, very good note. And I was like, oh, like, that's very validating, how I love praise, but also I think it's very, very true. So story, walk, visual, like, cues, understanding what it is supposed to look and feel like based on the director or the writer or the production company's previous work, music to try and keep me in the zone whilst I'm going about getting ready for it, because sometimes it takes like an hour to do your hair and makeup and by the end of it you're like so deflated. So anything that can sort of keep that momentum building towards the moment when you do that first take. I try and curate my space and have as much control as I possibly can, which is admittedly harder when you're traveling or you're taping in an unfamiliar place. But self-tapes have been beneficial to me because I do like having that control and not having to worry about, human interactions, which sometimes can be a little difficult for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people like the live experience of being in a room, but one of the downsides is being distracted and seeing people, and seeing friends or seeing people that, but maybe they're not friends. So that can stress you out a little bit too. I love what you said about story too. Brandon's got a sweatshirt that says #story over everything.
Yeah.
And one of our coaches and mentors, Tom Todoroff, often talks about that. That's what our job is, to be storytellers. And that's what it's about, versus thinking, oh, this is about me and my moment and my time to shine. You really got to look at how does your character and how does your role serve the overall story. And I love what you said about watching the show too, getting a feel for the world and the tone. If people can totally miss it, and you're like you said, put forth a great performance, but it's a performance that doesn't belong in the show that they're auditioning for, which kind of shows to the casting director and the production that you don't really know what you're working for. So those are great tips, great advice. And the walk thing too, Brandon, you often share that you like to go for a walk as well. stepping the text and going for a walk. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I love stepping the text. I think it's one of the best ways to get the words into your body as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
And can you share your little music trick that you used recently? Your little
me.
secret earbud.
I was like, come on, then. What's this
Holly.
I had an audition. Oh, I loved that audition so much. Not necessarily my work in it, but the film was a very cool concept about a young composer who is sort of driven mad by this song that only she can hear, that she's trying to get out on paper. And there was 3 scenes, and in the third scene, she kind of has this breakdown because she wakes up and she has, ruptured an eardrum because I think she's tried to shoot herself, and she realizes she can't hear out of one ear, and she's sort of overcome by this very quiet sadness. And the script specifically said subtle tears, So I was like, all right, we need tears, because you don't always need tears, but I was like, for this one, we really need tears. We have a woman who is deeply moved by music, and I had recently watched The Last of Us, and there's this really stunning piece that plays in this final montage at the end of episode 3, which, if anyone knows, that it's a very moving episode. My God, it's so moving. And I was just listening to classical music while prepping for this audition, and that song came across my my shuffle. I'm going to try and find it now so I can tell you what it's called. And so I took one of my AirPods and I put it in my ear when we were shooting that third scene, and I sort of adjusted my hair so that you wouldn't really see it so much. And I played it when we started, and I found that it really just, it really moved me still, partly because I'm still associating it with that gorgeous Last of Us episode. And, we got those tears on the first take. I think it was a one take.
Oh, yeah, you were a one take wonder on that one.
And, we had the perfect tears, and it was just like, music is it feels like such a cheat for me. But it's not a cheat, because I'm genuinely being moved in a way that sometimes, you're forcing for, particularly when you're, paying for your hour and trying to get your audition done and stuff. But I've done it in other stuff too. I actually, in Polarized, I had headphones in for another scene that I had to do where there were no lines, and it was just sort of my face for a minute going through all these thoughts. And the music is so evocative, and it really does do something for a human to hear, I think. And inevitably, like, the fine little thoughts and motions they were looking for in those extreme close-ups, like, they translated because I was just reacting to this beautiful music that I was hearing.